Yo, what's up? What's going on? What's good, everybody, man? Oh, goodness. Oh, my God. Yo. Here we are for the July 13th, 2025 edition of the Boston Source podcast. That's right. The Boston Source is here. And, man, oh, my goodness. I'm, still recovering from what was going on yesterday. Listen, I had been up until like 3, 4 in the morning 3, 4 in the morning out there in New York City, man. Just had like a little bit of rest, got back home and, had like a couple of hours to like recalibrate and things like that, or as they say, like to, rest up while being at home. And man, I'm still, feeling the effects of it, man. And I'll just tell you this, just being at that Ring 3 event, that was an experience, to say the least. But man, if I was at Ring 3 and the Taylor-Serrano fight card in Madison Square Garden on Friday, man, I would have probably delayed the show for a day, and I probably would have been asleep the whole day today. You know what I mean? Because all of those events that were happening over there in New York City, pretty much around Manhattan there for fight week, like going back and forth, I couldn't do all that. No, ain't no way I could have done all that. You know what I mean? Because you had two things. You had like a weigh-in, you had a press conference, you had open workouts, you had grand arrivals, you had all that type of stuff for like two events. And then on top of that, added another press conference on Friday night when it came to Ring 4, when they introduced Ring 4, of course, with that fight card that's happening in November there with you have David Benavidez going up against Anthony Yard, headlining that card on November 22nd. And you have there with Abdullah Mason versus Sam Noakes. There you got Devin Haney versus Brian Norman Jr. there for that WBO welterweight title. Bam Rodriguez is supposed to be there, against Fernando Martinez or whatever it is, supposed to be scheduled for November after Bam Rodriguez has this fight coming up on Saturday. So, man, that whole scene in New York, Evans is absolutely insane. But, wanted to just get into what was going on there Saturday night. Louis Armstrong Stadium there, fight card. They had 5 fights. Yeah, just had 5 fights. That's it. Not 10, not like no 15 or not like that. When you go to, sometimes you go to a promotional fight card and they'll have a whole bunch of fighters that they're trying to feature. And then you can have like up to 12 or so fights. Nah, you only have 5 fights. That's it. You know what I mean? You had the thing with the Sasumi fight. You had of course, the David Morrell Jr. there, Imam Katayev. You had the Alberto Puello versus Subio Matias. You had Shakur Stevenson versus William Zepeda. And then you had Edgar Berlanga versus Hamza Shiraz. That's it. That's all. That was all he needed to do. I kind of like was cool with that. You know what I mean? Because, sometimes going to a fight card and being there for, man, I would say like up to 9-10 hours. Nah, that for me, that ain't the business. It'll be crazy, to be out there until about 2-3 in the morning at a stadium. Nah, I ain't cool with that. Like, have it to the point where you're out by midnight or something. You know what I mean? So if you want to, do something, hang out in the bar or something, party or whatever, you can do that, right? But here, I thought it was a good overall atmosphere, with the exception of a couple of big things that kind of stood out here. So I'm going to go into this here real quick. As far as being a media member out there for Ring 3. Now, this is, what is it? Well, of course, with it being the third event, they had the whole thing last year, right? That was over in Los Angeles. I ain't go to that. You had what happened in May, Cinco de Mayo weekend in the middle of Times Square. I ain't go to that. You know what I mean? So here, this is like part 3 in the tennis stadium, of course, where they have the U.S. Open and all that type of stuff. So I'm like, hold up. You're going to have a whole boxing event where there's like tennis going down. All of these stadiums, Arthur Ashe Stadium, Louis Armstrong Stadium, a few other venues they had out there. So it was like, what in the world with this? But kind of was pretty good, man. Shout out to L Boxing on the live chat here with the Boxing Source, man. What's good with you, man? But yeah, I mean, I stepped there, man, and you know what? As far as how I look visually, it kind of gave me a vibe of like the Punch Bowl out there in California. You know what I mean? So that to me kind of like makes it to the point where there isn't a bad seat around. You know what I mean? So of course, if you were like a tennis fan and you've been out there for the U.S. Open, then yeah, you would probably see that it is a good overall venue to kind of like watch tennis. But for boxing, we had never seen something like that before, right? So for me, I was like, okay, let's see how this thing goes. Like look pretty cool. You could walk around the main area and you could see visually that not a good not a bad spot to try to view fights if they were going to have more than one fight card over there, right? But on the flip side, man, I don't care what service you got, right? You got T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, US Cellular, one of them other third party cell phone providers. You ain't getting no service for nothing, absolutely nothing. I'm telling you, when the whole thing started, I couldn't get no calls. I couldn't call nobody. It was insane because I had like whole conversation before the whole joint started, and it was almost like somebody programmed something in so nobody could have no cell service. It was crazy. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh no, that ain't gonna work. And they could have Wi-Fi service or whatever it is out there, but yeah, that whole Wi-Fi didn't even work all too hot either. At least for me, it didn't. So hey, I don't know how them folks that be going out there for tennis do it, but nah, that whole thing with the cell phone service, nah, I can't even roll with that there, cuz that was just absolutely off the rails. Can't even do that. Nah. So, but outside of that, it kind of looked pretty good, except, I did say that maybe there wouldn't be a bad seat in the house. I'll take that back. Okay. And here's the other thing that had me, because with me, of course, for a number of the events that I go to, I'm there doing photography. So if you go on to, like, for example, you go onto the website, you'll see a number of the events there where I'll have it like fighting and photos. So all of the fights, as far as like the major fights that go down, you'll have like, a little bit of a brief summary of the fight, but also have photos of the action that goes down in those fights. So, usually they'll put you in a position to where you could, properly get a good photo, good shots, pictures of the fights where it's happening, where it's going down. Here, just being real, where they had us at, ain't the business. No. Why? Because listen, it was twofold, right? They put like a number of the media members on a section that was like visually behind the blue corner. So you would be looking and you would see the blue corner. So if you had a fighter that was at the blue corner, you would see their back, right? And then you'll be able to see the person that's fighting there on the red corner. That wasn't the problem. The problem was, one, if y'all were watching it live, you had the whole thing with the overhand camera, right? Or the overhead camera. It's one thing to have the overhead camera right there, but it's a whole nother thing to have another cameraman that's standing right there at the blue corner. So if I'm coming from that side and I'm taking pictures, I don't just necessarily have to worry about the overhead camera moving around and blocking. I got a whole person that's standing right there blocking the whole thing. So a number of the shots that I want to take, I can't even do that because this dude's standing right here. I'm like, oh no. I was like, no way. Nope. I'm sorry, y'all. Sorry, Ring, but couldn't do that. So by the time I got to about the fight that happened between Alberto Puello and Subriel Matias, nah, man, I move. Nah, because I can't have that, man, because y'all could have all y'all people there, on the ring apron. That's cool. But I gotta be able to have a good visual so I'll be able to take a good enough shot there of the action. So, once I, get all collected and things like that on, the website, you'll be able to have fighting in photos, and you'll be able to see a few things there. But I may have a few examples out there for those that are, watching live on YouTube. Shout out to everyone watching live here on YouTube. Yes, and it will be available on Spotify and, as they say, iHeart, with the podcast, iHeart. You have Amazon as well. So, you got all of that. So, all right. So here it is, right? So I'm going to see if I could share this here real quick as far as like an example. And this kind of goes to, how I do things as far as like the results, right? So, of course, there you had with Shakur Stevenson going up against William Zepeda. So I'll just start off with that as far as like a fight to go over. So you had Shakur Stevenson versus William Zepeda there for the WBC lightweight title. Of course, Shakur Stevenson stepping in there with undefeated, what was that, 23-0, right? And William Zepeda there at 33-0 going into this bout. So you had Zepeda, of course, as top-rated contender, WBC. Actually was a WBC interim champion. He was like number one in the WBA, number one in the WBO, all that stuff, IBF, all of that. You know what I mean? So it was just about him, getting that opportunity to fight for a world title, going up against Shakur Stevenson, who was coming off of his win there February 22nd in Riyadh, right? So it was something to the point where you had Shakur Stevenson going up against a top-rated fighter there, highly rated fighter or whatever, and wanted to see what was going on. And you had Zepeda there, of course, 33-0, had a whole bunch of, notoriety about his activity, punch activity, and things like that, right? But for me, and this was, coming from the whole thing with the press conference, the initial press conference to talk about this Ring 3 fight card. Back then, I said, I don't see where William Zepeda can get this win. You know what I mean? Sorry, I ain't see a way that, William Zepeda could get this win. I thought it would be like an instance of, Shakur Stevenson versus Oscar Valdez back then, or something where maybe we could have seen a performance like how we had Floyd Mayweather up there against Arturo Gatti or something, because I just felt like the movement of Zepeda wasn't going to be good enough against Shakur Stevenson, and with Shakur Stevenson's speed, he'd be able to just pick him apart, or just get to him way before Zepeda could try to get to him, so to speak, right? So that being said, that is, to me, was just exactly what I was looking at. And shout out to Secret Dance Move there, in the building. And hey, see, that was my thing. Zepeda was too one-dimensional for me. And I was saying, like, with his activity, it's one thing to have activity, but you got to be able to mix up your punches, mix up your punch sequence, mix up what you're, going to be able to do as far as like your overall attack. You'll mix up a 1-2-3, 1-2-1 lead, lead left, because both of them are southpaws, right? So that's what I was looking for William Zepeda to do, to order to throw off the timing of Shakur Stevenson, or throw off the movement, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? And yeah, I just didn't see where Zepeda was going to be able to get the upper hand on Shakur Stevenson on this front. Even with him, supposedly being the taller fighter, having a longer reach, it was just nah. And then those first couple of rounds, when I saw Shakur Stevenson's like speed and how he reacted to the punches there from William Zepeda, I was like, oh man, this ain't gonna be good. It's not gonna be good. And one of the punches early that I saw that stood out, and I think this was like in the middle of the ring, or around the middle of the ring, William Zepeda was throwing a series of punches here, if you look at it. And then you had, Shakur Stevenson, in the pocket or whatever it is. And he stood stationary and then just turned and then threw the left to the body. And it was like, pop. And it just had to snap. And I was like, ooh, this ain't looking good, man. This ain't looking good. You know what I mean? And I was like, well, now we're gonna see something where it's gonna have Shakur Stevenson look really good. And I said there, like live, I said, look, Zepeda is the right opponent for Shakur to, showcase what he could do. You know what I mean? Shout out the secret dance move there in his reaction to the fight. He says, I don't understand why Zepeda never threw the overhand looping right hand, overhand or overhand like right hook or something there when Shakur showed up, especially when Shakur was like in the corner. Like he'll be up there, like I said, I got my left hand right here. So he'll be like back. And it's like, he'll do a shell or whatever it is. And Zepeda, it was almost like he just did something like it was some basic drills. He would like just punch, 1, 2, like nothing with any real emphasis. He didn't really have like many shots that had emphasis. It was just like 1, 2, 3. And I was saying this in the whole thing with the preview and the keys to victory. I'm like, you can't, do like a basic 1, 2, 3 because that just looks, uniform. You're gonna have to, throw it off like, 1, 2, 3, and that. You got to snap with one of your punches. I didn't see that there from Williams Zepeda, and so it was like Shakur Stevenson's like, you seen it there. He was like smiling, and he's like, oh, so okay, so you're gonna play it like this, bam, just with snap, bam, and had the snap of punches, and I kind of like pointed that out, that post-fight presser with Shakur Stevenson, but I said, all I've seen over the course of the fight for me was Zepeda having these arm punches and Shakur just picking them off with the snap and just being able to just shoot from the hip or shoot from his, base or, the lower body. Because if you have like a good base, lower body, able to use your waist behind your punches, then you're going to get a whole lot more snap and a whole lot more power behind them instead of just, just working 1, 2, almost like, you're doing twists and stuff like that. No, you can't really get, much behind it. So, yeah, you did see instances where Shakur Stevenson got hit clean from Williams Zepeda, but it just didn't have that much of an effect because it was like I said, it was like a little bit where he's just using the arms and not really snapping behind the punches there, Williams Zepeda. So I was like, I just didn't like, how Zepeda was approaching it from those first few rounds or whatever it is. And it just looked really, really bad in those first 6 rounds. I was like, ooh, like if Shakur ends up stopping Zepeda, it's because like Zepeda was just doing the same thing over and over and over again. You know what I mean? The boxer here live, he says no counter punching from Zepeda either. They was taking turns. Yeah, I mean, at least try to answer the answer. You know what I mean? Not answer Allen Iverson. Just answer what was coming back from Shakur Stevenson. You know what I mean? And I didn't see that from Zepeda a lot of times. But for me, I just couldn't understand with Zepeda why he was kind of playing into the defense of Shakur Stevenson. Because, like I said, and one time he'll be in the ropes and he'll have like, how they have a shoulder roll or whatever it is, or try to cover or whatnot. And you could see there were spots where you could connect as in open spots. So, like, for example, if I have my right hand up, like they say, holding the phone close to my face, and I have my left hand that's over to the body, right? I still got the left side of my face and a little part of the body open, right? Or at least try to throw to it. Williams Zepeda didn't even throw to that. He just threw to where the guard was. You could clearly see that Shakur Stevenson was guarded up, and then you're gonna throw the punch to where he's blocking. Come on, man. What are we doing? What are we doing, man? It's as bad as Toronto. Oh man, we're gonna get into that too here later on in the podcast, because I was kind of disappointed in that too, as far as like the performance there of one fighter. You know what I mean? So yeah. But I'll get into that a little bit more there on this front. But back to the whole thing with Shakur Stevenson. I thought it was a very, very good performance there from Shakur Stevenson, particularly with him being able to easily transition from defense to offense and vice versa. Because it was like he knew, even though I talk about, the spacing that Shakur Stevenson uses against his opponents, here, as I was mentioning with, William Zepeda being listed at 5'9" and having a reach advantage, it was like a small reach advantage, but a reach advantage nonetheless over Shakur Stevenson. Stevenson didn't really care much about that, particularly, as I was mentioning there with Zepeda just throwing those arm punches. If you're throwing arm punches, I'm not going to be necessarily worried about too much whether I'm blocking the shot or not, because there's, not much behind them to really affect me. So, yeah, I'll be able to, have you land a couple of punches. But when I punch back, I'm going to be like, bam, like I'm going to really snap with my punches. So, yeah, you could land a couple, but if I land one, they're going to definitely notice that one that I'm going to land on you. And that's what I've seen there early in this fight between the two. And I just said, like, you know what? This one is going to be like a cakewalk. And so in the second half of the fight, that's pretty much what I saw. It was a cakewalk. And then shout out to Secret Dance Move on her latest comment, because it's definitely what happened in that fight. But yeah, Shakur was like in a cakewalk because he's like, you know what? He can't really do this much to me. I'ma just, go through these last few rounds and it's gonna be cake. And he just coasted through those last few rounds, So those first 6 or so rounds, 6 to 8 rounds, you've seen like the best of Shakur Stevenson in that front. And for me, that's why once they read the scorecards, it was exactly what I was predicting there, as far as like 10 rounds to 2. You know what I mean? Like my guy Joe here said, man, he said had it scored like the judge at ringside, 10 rounds to 2. Yeah, up to round 2 and 3, it was difficult to find rounds to give there, at least for Williams to pay that. Yeah, because it was just too precise what was coming from Shakur Stevenson. With Williams Zepeda, it was more, like I said, I mean, if it lands, then it lands, but it didn't really, give like no ooh and all. Because when you were there, when I was there live, like you could really see like Shakur Stevenson was doing something. So, with that being said, man, 2 scores of 10 rounds to 2, 1 score of 11 rounds to 1. Therefore, Shakur Stevenson to retain the WBC lightweight title, and so he is now 24-0. And yeah, this is like a little bit of some of the photos there, fighting the photos. I was out there, so you got the thing there with the ring walk. That was another thing too there with the ring walk, man. Y'all able to see it because you had that uniform and all that, and you had the cap on, and he kind of played to what was going on leading into the fight, because of course the comments there from Turkey LLC saying that, hey, I want these fights to be good action fights. I don't want to see no Tom and Jerry type things going on in the ring with one fighter just running around the ring and another fighter trying to chase him. So Shakur Stevenson played right into that with the hat, having the Tom and Jerry hat. That was like absolutely funny, man. But he kind of like does that to a certain extent, man, because he'll play to what's going on surrounding his upcoming fight. So of course you had like one example back I think it was like a few fights back, right, where he came out and he had the uniform and everything, but in the trunks, it didn't have like Shakur or Stevenson. It's like it had Twitterson. Instead of Shakur Stevenson, it's like Shakur Twitterson. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah. So he definitely plays to what's happening there on social media. So he had the whole Tom and Jerry hat, while he was walking to the ring and stuff like that. You had the action that was going down there, with Shakur Stevenson landing his right lead, and yeah, it was just something where he just knew where Williams Zepeda was going to be, because Williams Zepeda was just right in front of him, kind of like linear. So it's not like he's going to be stepping off the line. Like, for example, if you have Zepeda, as you see there, with his right foot as a lead foot, and he doesn't like step away or step off to the side there with the back foot to kind of like give Shakur Stevenson a different look. Nah, he didn't do that. So Stevenson is like, yeah, I could be at any position around the ring. I know where Zepeda is going to be. I'm able to get out of the pocket because I can move like that. Zepeda, he can't do that. So, yeah, I know you're going to be right there. All right, bet. So that's what you're seeing there. And, you got a couple of things there, where he's able to, land the left or whatnot. So you got that too as well. So, yeah, man, I mean, just felt like it was a clear victory there for Shakur Stevenson, for him to retain that WBC lightweight title. It says the commentary was all over the place, calling out that David Morrell fight a robbery was too much. All right, this is going to be something here. All right, that might be okay. That's going to be the next fight I'm going to talk about. David Morrell Jr. versus Imam Katayev there, because that one, pretty interesting what was going on with that. Okay. And the guy, a guy on here, of course, that's part of the weekly episodes of Real Boxing with Coach Ronnie Shields on Tuesdays here on the YouTube channel there. Of course, with Coach Ronnie Shields being the lead trainer there for David Morrell Jr. So, I thought that bout was going to be, fairly interesting early, but I felt like David Morrell Jr. was going to outbox and outpoint Imam Katayev, right? First half of the fight was pretty interesting, but I'm going to get into why that was the case as well. Hold on here real quick. But had the whole thing with shout out to Dante's Boxing Talk. Seeing, yeah, man, DB3 in the building. Yep. I was able to see them there after the fights were done. All of them there, brother. Keon, Kelvin, and Keyshawn Davis there, and they all had some good receptions there from the fans there in attendance there. So yeah, I seen them out there. Gave them bats and all that type of stuff there too. Yeah, you know what I mean. So. Like I said, it was good overall scene as far as like, having a lot of the fighters, that's there in attendance and stuff like that, made for a good scene overall. You know what I mean? All right. So back to this thing here with David Morrell Jr. and Imam Katayev, right? So first off, you had the whole little thing that was going on in the week leading into the fight. I want to know who was releasing that statement about Imam Katayev and the IBA with what they were saying about his previous fights or whatever. Because for this, they were using VADA testing as the WBC was involved in a certain capacity with this bout. You had David Morrell Jr. and Imam Katayev rated in the WBC, and as y'all know, the WBC has a clean boxing program, uses VADA for their testing. So you had to go through VADA testing in order to be part of this fight and, stay within the WBC ranking. So both, Morrell Jr. and Imam Katayev had a couple of those tests. It came back negative. So that should have been basically a nothing burger, right? All right, so bet. Now, with this fight itself, David Morrell Jr., I was, kind of, definitely favoring Morrell Jr. to, outbox, outpoint, and then eventually stop Imam Katayev. But all of the stuff that I thought that he was going to do, he didn't really do until the second half of the fight. A lot of the stuff that he did in the first half of the fight was more about him, using defense and trying to get away from Imam Katayev, right? And the thing with Katayev is, yeah, he was there undefeated going into the bout 10-0, but all except for one of those wins was by way of knockout or stoppage. Now was his last bout that he had, back in March. So you've seen that he has some, good pop, good, emphasis, as I say, behind his punches. you don't really want to trade with them or whatever it is, but you want to at least score enough punches to the point where like you see him scoring and then him not being able to do that much. But here you kind of seen, Morrell Jr., throw land a few jabs here and there, but wasn't really active with the jabs, and then had like a thing here with the high guard. Okay. And when he had the high guard and I seen it, I was like, oh man, this isn't looking good, because one of the things I've seen here with David Morrell Jr. there is that when he uses a high guard, it's not necessarily, at least for me, it's not that effective. Shout out to Ant McQueen there, does a lot of boxing analysis, watches fights and analyzes fights. Before went out there, for the fights this weekend, Ant McQueen had something where he was showing or going over David Morrell's fight against Hot Rod, J. Halazik, and also against David Benavidez. And there in both of those fights, you can see, David Morrell Jr. do the high guard. And it was pretty much like this if you're watching, live on YouTube, right? Where you have it to the point where it's right in front, but you have so many spots that you could land or open, because it's almost like he's covering his eyes or whatnot, right? Or at least covering partial or half of his vision. So with that being said, you can see all of the openings that you could have against David Morrell Jr. when he does that. And if he doesn't like move around or try to slip or go back or move his head while having a high guard, you got the jab that'll go right to pretty much like it can land on the chin. You got the whole body that's available. If you got like either a good reach or you're in a good position from a distance perspective, you could throw hooks around it. You could also land uppercuts. And I've seen that in David Morrell's previous fights against Kalajic and against David Benavidez. And here I saw the same thing with Imam Katayev, right? Now, with that being said, it was like a habit with David Morrell. And in that fifth round, you kind of seen that. And you seen David Morrell back up. And then when he backed up and then tried to put up the high guard, Katayev already was throwing a hook. And then when he landed the hook, it didn't really have that much emphasis, but it still landed with the good enough, power behind it that put Morrell down. Was he hurt? No, not really. But to have that type of habit and continue to pay for it, I'm like, come on. So then I was like, watching it live, I was like, you know what? This was going to have to happen. David Morrell Jr. is going to really have to use a jab. And I'm sure that, Coach Ronnie was telling them that, and so after that, that's what he was using the jab, building off the jab, just being consistent with the jab and just keeping it right in front of Imam Katayev. And so, with Katayev, it's not like, Katayev was moving his head or whatever it is, so to speak, boss. But he had like things where he would try to do things, foot feints, or, try to, fake out David Morrell. But as long as David Morrell was keeping a right jab in front of him, he pretty much like had it. So that's what I was looking at. It's like, yo, if you have the reach, you have the height, keep using the jab and be consistent with it. And if you have to, double jab and then, build off of that. And once he did that, then you see more from an offensive perspective of David Morrell Jr. And there were some times where you seen, Katayev be in a little bit of trouble on one side. And then, but the other side is sometimes, you try to make it, more of a fight than it has to be. And when you make it more of a fight than it has to be, you get careful and you get caught. And that's what ended up happening in that fifth round with David Morrell Jr., who got caught. Now, after utilizing the jab and working a little bit, he could have made it real easy. And for me, like live, I said, from round 7 on, long as he used that jab, he was good. I thought he would have been good. So that's what he did. Shout out, those listening live here, man. We got more on the live chat there. Shout out my guy there, Clarence McClain in the building there, No Duck Zone in the building, and Brother Chalk Trends is here, man. It said, Morrell made the fight difficult. Like I said from from the get-go. That high guard, I'm really, really upset with that high guard because it's not that sharp. And when I was talking about the analysis there between in the fight with Morel and Benavidez, there was like a difference of using that type of a guard because it's one thing to just have it right here, but it's another thing to move around, move your head, or try to mix it up, or as long as you see what's going on, then yeah, you know what I mean. But when you just hear, people could do so much with it because you ain't doing you ain't saying, okay, if I'm like this, I'm trying to set a trap so that once they throw their punch, I can throw something right back at it. With Morel Jr., I'm not seeing that defense to offense transition there on that front. So I feel like that has to improve. Yeah, he's only had 12 or 13 pro fights here so far, but with Coach Ronnie, yeah, that's how I'm going to. That's what I'm going to sell there. It's like, we got to work on, that defense to offense. You know what I mean? A shout out to Jeep Funky Boxing. It says, stopping by to say what's up and hit the like button. That's right, man. Support, hit the like button there. You watching live on YouTube or you're watching the replay, hit the like button, to support the Boxing Source podcast right here. Yeah. So, as I was saying, if you see what happened there after the fifth round, Morel was just utilizing the jab and building off of the jab. And you could see there that he had the advantage at that point. It was just more of him trying to make the fight be more exciting than it really had to be. Although he could have still done that, but just keep a good enough distance from Imam Katayev because, it shouldn't have been that difficult. Now, with the decisions there, they had it to the point where it was a split decision. You had 95-94 in favor of Katayev. You had a score of 95-94 in favor of David Morrell Jr. and then 96-93 card in favor of David Morrell Jr. So you had what it was, 6 rounds to 6, pretty much even there, but with the knockdown, that's what would have gave that card over to Katayev. And then you had a 95-94, which was 6 rounds to 4 in favor of David Morrell Jr., and then a 7 rounds to 3 for David Morrell Jr. I felt it was 7 rounds to 3. I told him it was 7 rounds to 3. You know what I mean? Because for Katayev, especially like early in the bout, I really didn't see that much offensive activity from him. It was more about him just trying to walk down, but not, throw anything while it's getting to David Morrell Jr. So all David Morrell Jr. had to do was just, 1 or 1-2 and then move around. But, like I said, he used like a lot of things there with his athleticism, but then also, but if he's stationary with that high guard, that's where he has a lot of the issues. And I feel like he has to improve on that in order to, really get there within that top of the particular division there at light heavyweight. Because in this one, they had, promoted this through Ring Magazine that this had, the number 8 ranked fighter and the number 10 ranked fighter there in the light heavyweight division. So now you're going to have David Morrell Jr. here. He's going to probably be around, number 7 and number 6 there in the ring rankings and climbing up, whether it's like the WBO or, the WBC or whatever it is, as I mentioned. And now you got to see like, okay, who could David Morrell Jr. fight next there at 175? I mean, hey, they still got, Alexander Kovacic. They're kind of highly rated in the WBC rankings from what I see. So maybe he could fight Alexander Kovacic. And I think that would be another interesting fight, particularly because you have Kovacic as a former world champion and having the skill level that he does. How is David Morrell Jr. going to, see if he could improve on what he's doing, particularly on defense, against a guy like Kovacic that could have, a few offensive tricks that he could do there. My guy Clayton says there, last night was crazy. Yeah, man, it was absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. I'll give another thing on on the well, the criticism of sorts there for being in the venue. I was talking about the whole thing with the cell phone reception, right? Man, it was so bad. You're there as a media member, and for those that may have covered like events and things like that, you get notices as far as like what happens, what you could do before the fight, and if you got to go, a specific spot here, or what's going on, after the fights are over and all that type of stuff, right? It was so bad that we didn't receive like the thing for pre-fight until late, as far as like not the whole the details to pick up credentials, but I'm talking about like once you get in the building. We didn't get that until late, but that wasn't the kicker. The kicker was trying to figure out where the media center would be at after the fights. So they had like a whole email about, okay, yeah, it's going to be in a media center, or there's going to be a media center, but they didn't necessarily say what room it was. So after the fights were done, we're trying to figure out where the media center is because we didn't get no email, okay? Or we couldn't see no email. Yeah, some of us were able to make it into the media center for the post-fight presser. But the thing that got me was we didn't receive that email until almost 2 a.m. because of how bad the cell phone reception was. I'm like, come on, we done already left and all that type of stuff. Folks in the hotels, or they, take, closing down, going to sleep, or going out in the club or something, hit the bar. And then all of a sudden, you probably get a notice on your phone, getting an email, and you're like, what in the world is this email at like 2 o'clock in the morning? Oh, it's details for the post-fight press conference. I'm like, come on, God, it was that bad? Nah, yo, that was insane. That was absolutely insane. But yeah, still, I like how, like I said, I like how the venue looked as far as like from a fan's perspective. But yeah, that cell phone service thing, that is just the worst. All right. So yeah. So talk about the thing there with Shakur Stevenson. Talk about this thing here with David Merle Jr. I want to just go into this whole thing with the as they say, the main event there with Edgar Berlanga and Hamza Sheeraz. Okay. Yeah, you got Edgar Berlanga, you know what I mean? He was a former world title challenger and things like that. You'll try to keep my composure on this one to properly analyze and assess what was going on here in this one, right? Okay. So yeah, you had Edgar Berlanga in there. Like I said, former world title challenger. He was in the ring there against, Canelo Alvarez. You know what I mean? He got knocked down early in that fight, and then, still, went through the whole 12 rounds. And there's a whole lot of, hoopla about what happened, after the fight with Edgar Berlanga. That's one thing. Okay. After that loss, he got back in the ring. It was around, my birthday or whatnot, there in March. The Career Royale Resort. He fought, what is it? Jonathan Gonzalez Ortiz. Got a first round knockout. Okay, that's cool. You got Hamza Sheeraz, there, 21-0-1 going into the fight. Of course, it was noted that this was his first bout at the 168-pound division, or competing at super middleweight. His previous fight, he fought for the WBC middleweight title against Carlos Adames, where it had the result as a draw. A lot of people said that he lost. It is what it is. Okay. So going into this fight, like I said, the when they had the announcement there for Ring 3, Edgar Berlanga talking about, he's gonna, smoke a pack. He was clowning Hamza Sheeraz. It's like, you in my city. This is New York. You know what I mean? I got my guy Fat Joe here with me. I see that you got Andy Lee there in your corner as your head trainer. Andy Lee knows what's up. I beat one of his fighters before. I'm gonna beat this guy too. And then you had the whole thing with Fight Week, how Edgar Berlanga was acting, all that type of stuff. And then we get into the fight. And then the fight, oh man, because hey, supposed to be, they're the headliner, Edgar Berlanga, having the New York ties and all that, PR, Puerto Rican and all that type of stuff. So we had like a number of the Puerto Rican fans, there in attendance to watch it. And, they wanted to see Edgar Berlanga just dust this dude. That certainly didn't happen right there, player. That didn't happen. Oh man. First round, first couple of rounds, you had a good little back and forth there between them and that type of stuff. They kind of looked a little bit tentative as far as like, getting their offense started. And then they had a couple of exchanges there in the third round, and then in the fourth round, boy. Oh boy. I'm sorry. See, come on, shout out to Smitty Man for you. Oh man, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. Hey, Berlanga, hey, look, just as a quick summary, Berlanga got cooked. He got cooked. Oh man, I just seen, man. Yeah, man. Hey, he got straight up cooked. Cause the thing with Sheeraz, I mean, y'all saw the fight that he had against Carlos Adames. Yeah, okay, cool. But going up in the ranks there in the middleweight division there for Hamza Sheeraz, he was there like, of course, being undefeated, but he was just dusting dudes. Like he dusted Liam Williams, another one of them Liams they got over there in the UK. Yeah, I did say that. Then, we had the whole thing with the Matchroom versus Queensberry 5v5. He was involved in that last year, and he fought, Ammo Williams and just beat up Ammo Williams over the course of 11 rounds. And then that next fight, he was in Wembley Stadium against Tyler Denny, and that as they say, that is like one of those stay busy fights. I have no issues with fighters having stay busy fights against guys that they'll be supremely favored against, like a 20-1 or 25-1 favorite, something like that. But you got to do something in order to stay busy, and that's what he did there against Tyler Denny. And I was out there for that fight at Wembley, and I was like, man, I knew this was going to end in like 1 or 2 rounds. And that's exactly what happened right there. So outside of the Adames fight, he was really like beating up folks. Yeah, at 160 pounds, but still, you know what I mean? He was still dusting folks, and he was still, there where he could do a lot, given, where he's at with his height and his reach there at 6'3". Edgar Berlanga, you could see that he hadn't necessarily worked on multiple facets of trying to get to his opponent and whatnot. You know what I mean? So I was like, man, you know what I mean? Yeah. He sure thought it was, man. Yeah, he was the one. He's like, I ain't gonna lie, I'm getting cooked, man. Yeah, and that's exact, man. Barbecue chicken. It was barbecue chicken out there, man. A big ups to KMJ Network in the live chat here, man. Y'all check out KMJ Network there in the building on YouTube as well, too, man. Just talking about some talk here on the Boxing Source podcast and whatnot. So, that being said, man, I mean, after those first couple of rounds, and it was something because you're there live, you're sitting there live, and you got a number of Puerto Rican fans around it, and they said like, yo, cook this dude, yo, turn him into a chopped cheese, the Aki way, son, or whatever, you know what I mean? And I'm looking and I'm watching this live, and I'm like, okay, and properly assessing what's going down and what each fighter needs to do. And for Edgar Berlanga, it was like he's there, trying to get to Hamza Sheeraz, of course, with Sheeraz being 6'3" and having long reach. I'm saying you gotta mix things up, throw the jab, set him up. If you think that you got more power than Hamza Sheeraz, then yeah, you're gonna have to do something in order to get within range. And I'm not saying like, at least sometimes you can throw away jabs, as I say. What do I mean by throw away jabs? And that as long as you're defensively sound, you could throw the jab. You know what I'm saying? As long as you have yourself to where you could guard your face good enough. So what I mean is, like, you could throw it to the point where your hand is like in front of your face, and then you're able to actively guard from your right hand, at least, hold the phone. Edgar Berlanga, wanted to go ahead and try to get in range and try to trade, but he was not as sharp as Sheeraz. And then in the fourth round, oh man, he got caught with the 1-2s. And then Sheeraz just somebody said that Hamza Sheeraz like treated him like David Benavidez treated Rogelio Porky Medina. It just said bop, 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 bop. And I was like, oh man. And then when I saw that first knockdown, I was like, oh man, the whole building went crazy there, man. And hit the thing with David Fields, though, man. I mean, yeah, I get it. You want to make sure that the fighter that scored the knockdown is properly there at the neutral corner. But man, you spent too much time being concerned. I'm being real. You spent too much time being concerned about Hamza Sheeraz being in that neutral corner instead of like properly counting Edgar Berlanga. And I feel like when he did that, he kind of gave Edgar Berlanga a little bit of additional time to recover. Just being real, right? But after Berlanga got up, boy, yeah, he tried to, back up and then try to see if he could, counter and swing and get a couple of punches in and lands in there on Hamza Sheeraz. But man, Hamza Sheeraz just pretty much busted him up again. And then, man, when that second knockdown happened, I thought that was it. I thought it was over. Hamza Sheeraz thought it was over. He had his hands up and all that type of stuff, man. I was like, yo, he got busted up there, man. But hey, I mean, you had Berlanga. He was able to get up, man. He was able to get up. Props to him on that front. He was able to get up. But by that time it was the end of the round, and you had that minute there for Berlanga to recover. Man, it didn't even matter if it was 5 minutes. It was over, dog. It was over, because once he had the first few seconds or whatever of that round, Hamza Sheeraz just went back into business. And you seen that the legs still weren't there for Edgar Berlanga. And it didn't really take that much for Hamza Sheeraz to knock down Edgar Berlanga again. And then that's where, referee just walked in, stepped in and stopped the fight, man. So, man, I was like, yo, that right there, that had me going crazy because, yeah, Berlanga got cooked. Like barbecue chicken, as I said, he got cooked on that one. And Sheeraz getting that knockout victory. I mean, at least for me, I thought that Sheeraz was going to, have, outbox him or whatever it is. But yeah, that, right there, I did not expect it to be that bad. I'm sorry. I didn't expect it to be that bad. And yeah, like I said, I had to, be at another vantage point, for watching these fights. So I was like, yo, this, I was around the same, right there around center ring that time. Sorry, y'all, but this right here, at least if y'all are able to see it here on the YouTube screen or on the Summit Dream screen, as they say, man, like, yeah, just, Hamza Sheeraz like landing that punch there and sending Berlanga to the canvas. Yo, that, he just took him out. That was it. It was over. It was done. Like Berlanga, as it was mentioning, as long as Berlanga wasn't able to properly set up his shots in order to, nullify the reach advantage that Hamza Sheeraz had, I didn't know what path that he would have the victory on this one, and so that being said, trying to trade with a guy like a Hamza Sheeraz that had a pretty good knockout ratio to begin with, and was able to properly beat down and stop a number of the fighters that he faced. Not a good move. Not a good move. So here, that's what ended up happening. Berlanga got beat up, got embarrassed. There, this, as to say, this home area, not good. Not good at all. And after the fight, you had Frank Warren saying that now Hamza Sheeraz is the new king of New York. I was like, oh, they didn't say that. Oh my God. Yo, they just roasted Edgar Berlanga. And yeah, I know about the whole thing with Oscar De La Hoya too. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But just talk about this fight right here. Berlanga got cooked, man, just straight up cooked. And so now, with that being said, Hamza Sheeraz is not only the winner, but the number one contender for the WBC Super Middleweight Championship. So he could be next in line to face the WBC Super Middleweight Champion. We all know who the current Super Middleweight Champion is. So that's who they were talking about after the fight. You know what I mean? Shout out to Raphael in the building. He has some select comments or select words about the fight between Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. So I gotta get to that there real quick. Hopefully, because I still got one more fight to talk about here on this fight card. So that's the thing there, man. Oh snap. let me pull up something here too, man. Because you had the whole thing with this main event too, right? You had a lot behind it. I still can't get over Berlanga just getting cooked like that. It's bad, but that's the thing about it, man. Oh, jeez. Let me see, because I wanted to see if I could pull up this comment here, but yeah, this is with Berlanga just getting just blasted, man. That just had me like all the way. It was a crazy scene. I'll just say that it was a crazy scene, man. But just having Berlanga get beat up like that, yeah, that was something there, man. So with that being said, man, this kind of like goes into the whole thing with the ring walks or whatever it was. Now you had someone out there, okay, that was in attendance. Of course, you had a lot of the fighters that were out in attendance, for this particular event. So in the pre-fight or the walkouts and stuff like that, first, you had the whole thing with Hamza Sheeraz, walking out and whatever. Then you had the whole thing with Edgar Berlanga, and with Edgar Berlanga, of course, as I said, being, as I said, from New York, whatever it is. And that's gonna be a whole other thing too, what I'm talking about later. But still, of course, Berlanga there with Fat Joe and stuff. So, walked out with the obvious song there. You know what I'm saying? No dancers just, pull up pants and lean the rock away or do the rock away, lean back. Okay. So had the whole thing with the lean back song, but to get cooked like that, it was bad. So this was something here from Clarissa Shields, who was there in attendance. She says, "I don't think nobody should walk out the lean back no more." Shout out to Spirit of LOC fans, man. Just joining in. He says like the Berlanga Sheeraz match, specific observations, breakdown, analysis. You know what I mean? Like I said, man, I mean, as I summarized there, Berlanga got cooked. It was more about Sheeraz's accuracy, precision. And I talked about it in the post fight presser. While he had Spencer, what is it? I forgot his last name, but you had Frank Warren, you had his manager there, Spencer, and you had Hamza Shiraz. And Spencer and Frank Warren were talking about the preparation there from Hamza Shiraz, leading into this fight. They said, we had about 6 to 8 weeks to work, with Andy Lee, but they saw that, he was calm, cool, collected, learned like everything that Andy Lee was teaching them and stuff like that. And, and that he was comfortable in his preparation in his bout against Edgar Berlanga. But I felt like it was the results like showed there in this bout, and they showed how sharp he was as far as like in comparison to Edgar Berlanga, being able to land much cleaner punches than Berlanga did, and turn the tide. Because there were some times that Berlanga was able to land a couple of punches on Hamza Shiraz, a couple of power punches, but he was still able to stay calm, stay focused, didn't really get rattled. And then when they had them exchanges, him like landing those cleaner shots and getting that instance where he was able to properly knock down Edgar Berlanga there with the first one in that fourth round, and then once again before the end of the round, that I thought he was much more precise than Edgar Berlanga, and that Berlanga not being able to utilize the jab early there in the bout kind of cost him, because you use the jab in order to try to work in more or to try to set up shots, because with Berlanga, as I was mentioning earlier, with him being a shorter fighter, he's got to figure out a way to get within range of Hamza Shiraz. And I say, start off with the jab and then follow through with the right, or give him different looks, try to set up feints. But with Berlanga, he does not have that ability to mix things up in order to set up his power right hand. He doesn't. Yeah, he had that whole knockout streak, but sometimes when you have good matchmakers behind you and they have a plan for you, and they plan to build you up in a certain way, they can find the right fighters to get you to look good. And that's what happened with Edgar Berlanga early in his career. I'm gonna try to get through this part here. So when you have that type of matchmaking, it makes you look good. But if you're not necessarily working on different things while you're on your way up, then you get too reliant on just doing one thing. And once more experienced fighters see that you're doing that, then all they have to do is just to fit in that one thing, because you're not setting it up. So that's the thing about it. You know what I mean? So with that being said, you seen there with Edgar Berlanga that he didn't have a multitude of ways to set up traps for Hamza Shiraz. Hamza Shiraz, like I said, I think he's like, I wouldn't necessarily say he's underrated from a power perspective, but he might be underrated from being accurate. So that's the thing there. Edgar Berlanga like banked on trying to swing with Hamza Shiraz, and he like really paid for it. He really paid for it on that. You feel me? So that's what I had as far as like that analysis there. All right. So one other thing here, man. Of course you had the WBC super lightweight title on the line there. You had Alberto Puello with the WBC super lightweight title, undefeated record going into this fight, going up against Subriel Matias, who was the former IBF super lightweight title. Of course, he lost that belt to Liam Powell in Puerto Rico, and Liam Powell lost it to Richard Hitchens, and Richard Hitchens, ended up defending it against George Kambosos. So you don't have like no, as they say, hot potato with the IBF title, at least for now, right? But here in this WBC super lightweight title fight, Alberto Puello 24-0, Subriel Matias 22-2. All 22 of his wins were by way of knockout there, but we had a couple of losses there in his career. Of course, like I said, the Liam Powell was the latest loss. You know what I mean? But outside of that, he was able to get back in the mix and get within contention of competing for the WBC super lightweight title. Now, going into the fight, it was more about, okay, how is Alberto Puello going to keep the distance from Subriel Matias? Because Subriel Matias, like, he just doesn't really care too much about what's coming forward, and he just makes people pay. But before we go into all of that, I wanted to get in one of my panelists here that's able to join in to this show. Very thankful for him to be part of this show, and has been a long time contributor to the Boston Source. My guy, of course, the chef, Mr. TTP, as they say, Terrell Promotions, Mr. Security Extraordinaire. Brother Terrell is in the building, man. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, my brother? How you doing?
All good, man. All good, man. Good for you to join here in this boxing talk, man. I'm still talking about the card that was on Saturday. I hadn't necessarily gotten to the fight between Puello and Matias as of yet. But I did talk about the three other fights. There was Shakur Stevenson getting the win. Of course, Hamza Sheeraz packing up Edgar Berlanga, and the whole thing there with the first bout between David Morrell Jr. and Imam Katayev. So anything on maybe the main event there, or as they say, the co-feature, they had co-main events, but Shakur Stevenson's performance or Hamza Sheeraz's performance?
Yeah, definitely. I think we briefly talked about this in the group. And first of all, big up TTP. It's about to really take front and center real soon here. So you'll see. Just stay tuned for that.
All right,
TTP is on his way.
That's what I'm talking about.
But yeah, it was a great fight weekend, right? With Amanda Serrano fight and Katie Taylor, Alicia Baumgartner, my personal boxing beauty, right there. Yeah, but on to the Saturday's card, right? It's a great card, and I kind of want to focus on this Shakur Stevenson fight. I mean,
Okay.
honestly, man, it's like a lot of people thought this was going according to script, which in essence it did, but at times it really looked like Shakur Stevenson's approach to fighting Zepeda was not going to work because, I don't know the punch output that Zepeda threw, but of course he threw a million punches like that. But just because you're throwing punches does not mean they're effective, right? And so many times where it seemed like he was just overwhelmed Stevenson, but when you closely look at it with your boxing eye, you're like he's throwing, but he's like punches are glancing off his gloves, glancing off the shoulders with that shoulder roll style like that, and for someone with an untrained eye, you say, oh, he's winning, but that's really not the case. Because once again, Shakur, I want to give this guy so much credit, right? He literally stood flat-footed in front of Zepeda so many times. I mean, absolute flat-footed, and stared him down and saw the punches coming. Amazing. And like once again, the amount of punches that Zepeda threw at him, but being and against on the ropes when there's nowhere to go, right? When you're back on the ropes, he stood right there flat-footed, just shoulder roll, observed them, and just saw the punches coming and rolled with the majority of those punches. And at the same time, once you rolled and started doing those pull counters, boom, boom, counter, boom, 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 and they were good power shots. So I'm glad for Shakur Stevenson that one of his hands held up in this fight. That was an issue. So thank God for that. But he did a great performance, and I kind of liken that to what was that fight at 130? I think with Jamel Herring, when he just totally dismantled the guy with defense. I'm not sure. It was on that level. I think the fight with Herring was better, but this was certainly right there behind it in terms of performance, command, control, ring generalship, which people forget about. He is right there with that performance. So he did a great job in that. Great job.
Yeah, I mean, the thing was, as you said, with Shakur Stevenson, having that, being the flat-footed or pretty much like stationary, but just having a guard where he's able to properly fight either at a distance or inside, because a lot of people seen visually where he could be in the ropes, and then Zepeda could have like a little bit of distance and throw punches, even though, like I was mentioning, like sometimes Zepeda threw to the guard of Shakur Stevenson, which I didn't understand. But being able to see what's going on and then properly counter and be sharp with it, right? But the other thing too was like when they were closer to the center of the ring and they were, close, you could see that Shakur was properly, defending against the punches, the hooks that were in the inside, and still able to throw sharp and land sharper punches against William Zepeda. So it was like he just calculated everything that Zepeda was doing and was able to properly pick him off. And that was, very impressive there on his part for that. Well, I thought it was a great
Yeah,
performance
and
there from him. So, yeah, go ahead and continue on that.
yeah, I don't want. I just want to go back to that one point again. Go back there every time when Shakur was literally in the corner against the ropes with nowhere to go. There was no concern on his face whatsoever. And you're against a high volume puncher.
Yep.
And this guy, he just stood there and wait, boom, 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 roll, kind of pull, boom, roll, boom, right down the middle, straight right down the middle, again and again and again. And and it's kind of funny. I don't want to call Cepeda a one trick pony, but he just couldn't change from that same strategy. His thing was, I guess, his whole thing was like, let me just throw as many punches as I can, hope to hurt him, and he never had Shakur hurt, never had him hurt at all.
Yeah.
So, but he just kept doing the same thing over and over. And even that, as we often talk about, what was the adjustment from his corner? But that's what the guy knows how to do. So I know.
Yeah, yeah. And I know there was like one moment where Zepeda had landed something on Shakur that, had Shakur kind of stumble, to the ropes, right? And people, were looking at it live and like saying like, oh, like he was really hurt or something. I was like, no, he wasn't. He just, was, caught. That was like a good timing shot, at least there from William Zepeda. But outside of that, you really didn't see anything serious land on Shakur Stevenson that like stunned him. So as I was saying, like those your arm punches, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, like you're going through drills, boom, 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 and not mixing it up, not like having something where you could shoot or whatnot. Then yeah, it just made for a bad result there for Williams Zepeda. Got a request there, so I'm gonna hit someone up here and see if I could send that request out to him, man. So this thing here should work or whatnot. So yeah, I'll see if I can get another one of our guests on here to talk about the chop up as far as like what the fights are happening and going down. But yeah, real quick, wanted to talk about the WBC super lightweight title fight, Alberto Puello, Super Matias. I was saying there with Matias, he has pretty much like the same type of style. He'll risk, getting hit a few times in order to make sure that he's within range and does work, because every time that he does, throw shots, he tries to, get as much as possible there and try to hurt you, whether you're blocking the punches or not. You know what I mean? So with that being said, that's kind of like what I've seen early in this bout. And for Alberto Puello on this side, especially in the first half of this fight, I didn't see Puello kind of utilize his distance. To me, a number of people are talking about Puello and how he has a keep away type of style and tries to use his reach against his opponents. I didn't see that from him there too much. I didn't see the jab that much from him. And he was fighting going backwards. And when you're fighting going backwards, you want to at least try to keep your distance away from your opponent. Well, with Puello, you didn't really see it that much there. It was almost like he was waiting to counter. And the thing with Matias is he kind of like has that counter punching style, but he's aggressive as far as like he's walking forward with it. You know what I mean? So it's like he'll have like a guard, or he'll try to move around, and then he'll make you pay if you try to commit yourself to a punch. But with Alberto Puello, it was almost like he was tentative and being reactive to what Subriel Matias was doing. Before we go a little bit more into what's going down, wanted to bring in another panelist on here to properly assess what was going down in the card here. Of course, one of my longtime colleagues here in the boxing game. Of course, as they say, Mr. Philly Boxing or whatever it is, my guy YSM Sports Media is in the building, man. What's going on?
What up?
What up, man? What's good?
Oh man, slow motion, man. I'm watching Evolution too.
Yeah, of course, the action still goes on there with the sporting events and whatnot, man.
Yo, so we watching Naomi Bianca Belair is the special guest referee in Jade. So
Oh,
this is about as thick as racial tension in America. You know what I'm saying?
oh man, it's about as thick as what, like a 20-ounce steak, bro, or something.
Train smoke. Thickest
Yeah,
train smoke. Let's go.
yeah, man. It's hard, man. Oh goodness, yo.
The new WWE is this part is phenomenal.
Oh man, yeah, man. I know, and the thing is, they're gonna have good action too. So man, yeah, you gotta keep an eye on what's gonna go down with that matchup, man. Now let's talk about this thing here with Puello and Matias, and I thought that Puello was kind of like fighting the wrong fight there, particularly in the first half of the fight, and Matias just went to work, and I felt like Matias was gonna really have Puello in trouble, particularly when I seen him, land shots to the body when it was within range. But then after like round 6 or so, I saw Matias like stop doing that, and when I saw him stop doing that, I felt like he kind of gave Puello an opportunity to get back into the fight. And so in the second half, you seen Puello be a little bit more, offensive minded as far as like throwing more punches. But here I just felt like with Matias, I thought he did enough to get the win. The scores, when they were reading the scores live, I thought that maybe they would have had a way for Puello to get another one of these decisions, because I call him a split decision king. But they had it, 2 scores of 115, 113 in favor of Super Matias. So Matias is the one to, give Puello his first loss, though, man. But, I thought it was a pretty good fight overall. But I thought it was more about Matias, being able to do what he wanted to do in this fight. And for Puello, it was more about him being very tentative and not like trying to keep the distance away, or, at least throw the jab to do a keep away against Matias there on that front. With YSM, man, what did you think about that particular fight here first?
I had Puello edging it. I felt like he won the last 3 rounds convincingly. Matias had a lot of blind aggression where it wasn't behind strong fundamentals, and towards the end of the fight. And whenever he gets gassed, he gets really sloppy.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just comes forward, hands down, everything. He's just taking punches, but because he can take a good shot, he's not as affected as like a normal fighter. But I felt like he edged this fight out. I felt like Puello edged this fight out, and I would love to see a rematch. That was a really, really good fight.
Yeah, it was a good fight. A good fight. I just felt like with Puello, if he could have done that earlier, and probably could have like had a clean decision there against Matias. Because as you saw, like you see Matias kind of like get real tired there in that second half of the fight, like those last few rounds. And when Puello saw that he was tired, then you see more punches being thrown from Alberto Puello. But I wanted to see like how he would have been able to do that at the beginning of the fight. That maybe it could have opened up for more opportunities in the second half of the fight for that front. Brother Terrell, what were your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I definitely echo both of your sentiments in that. But for me, it's just a matter of fact, who's going to be able to pose their will on each other, on the other man. And I think that for me, despite Matias getting tired, like I said in the second half fight, for me, it was more clear for me than him putting his will against Puello like that. So let me ask you guys an old boxing question, right? Definitely give me an opinion on this. You have to take the title from the champion. How much stock do you put into that, in that statement that's been around for years?
Yeah, we've heard that statement. But the thing with that is like if you go into that fight with that mentality, then that means you kind of like by default before the fight even starts, you may have given the champion a round or two before the fight even starts. So, like for example, if it's like that 12, like a 12 round fight, then even if you like say for example won 7 rounds to 5, it could be a draw or something like that because you giving a round, you're gonna take a round from the challenger, because you're giving the champion like that type of like credence, or you're giving them credit or that type of thing. You know what I mean? So kind of like having that take the title from the champion. In some cases, it may sound good, but in other instances, it's almost like you're giving the champion a free round, before even stepping in the ring.
I feel like the rules, like Queensberry's rules, didn't say you have to take the title from the champion. It gave a criteria of how boxing matches should be judged, and that's what we should be going off of. Clean, effective punching, ring generalship, what is defense, and effective aggression.
Yeah.
And so I think that I thought that Puello started beating Matias at his own game. So yeah, Matias imposed the fight that he wanted to fight. But the reality is, if you are imposing your style onto the match and you end up losing, like the other guy who's the outside fighter is fighting better than you on the inside, I don't know what that says.
Mm. Yeah, that is something right there, because at times you did see that Puello was out working Matias on the inside, and I thought that happened like in the second half of the fight, because watching it live there, I thought Matias was doing a couple of things very well, but then when he was going to the body of Puello, I thought, oh well, maybe he could get to Puello and have him drop his guard or drop his activity. When it comes to keeping away or trying to move around the ring as much, but once he like abandoned that to a certain level, then that's when you're seeing Puello, like as they say, have a second wind and get the majority of the second the last few rounds of the fight. But even then, it seemed like that wasn't enough for Puello to get the win on that thing. I'm gonna see if I could look up the scorecards. I think I had the link for the scorecards of this.
And even while you do that too, when you look at the fact that for me going to this fight, I thought this was gonna be an evening match fight, both with same stature, height, size, reach, things like that. I thought that was gonna be an even match, even with speed on top of that. So when you go to the fight, of course we know that Matias got the win, and then you fast forward to that post-ring interview with Turkey in there making the next fight just like that. I'm like, yo. So like you guys said, it would be great to see a rematch between these two guys. That would be great. I think we get more of the same, but at the same time, I think Ford's team could come back and look at, see what they can do better, things like that, as far as him impose his will, things like that. But what do you guys think of Turkey just putting the next fight together just like that? What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, having it against the number one ranked contender there in the WBC rankings there, Dalton Smith. I guess that they were maybe talked with the WBC president there, Mauricio Suleiman, because this was like a voluntary defense of sorts for Alberto Puello going into the fight. Matias was ranked number 8. So I guess with Puello having his fight earlier against Sandor Martin, and then here against Subriel Matias, that was pretty much around that time for Dalton Smith to be the mandatory challenger. So, but I guess you had Turki Al-Sheikh kind of like take the reins with that himself, which I kind of find pretty funny, because didn't like the WBC and Turki Al-Sheikh have a little bit of a back and forth earlier this year in reference to the WBC light heavyweight title? But yeah, that's a whole other story there on that front. But yeah, I was gonna try to pull up the scorecards here. Let me see if I can pull them up and see what I got on that front. So he had the joint with with Puello and Matias here. Let me see if I got it. If it could, let me see if it could zoom though. If it could be like 25% or something. Yeah. So we had the thing there. I think they had Matias really winning rounds 4 through 7. That was like the majority of Matias rounds. There was like 4 through 7. And the blue, what is it? Tony Paolillo had like round 3 through round 7 in favor of Subriel Matias, and then he gave Matias the 9th and the 10th round. So I think that was pretty much it. Once he got the 10th round, then he pretty much like had the fight won or something. You know what I mean? So that's how those scores were, kind of like reading there. So it's mainly about him like getting a whole lot of those early rounds in the first half of the fight. So that's what they had on that front there, man. So what did you think about like that as far as like the scores? Like if anybody can chime in on it.
Yeah. Can you zoom in?
Let me see here if it does a thing for that. Because I'll do it for let's see if it get it for like 50% and see if it got it. Let's see. Yeah, all right. So yeah, you can do it like that. Can you see it better from that?
Yeah.
All right. So let's see here. Yeah, so it got like, yeah, there it goes right there. This should do it. Yeah, this should be able to do it right there.
A lot of those rounds were hard to score.
Yeah, a lot
They
of
were,
close
even on what you just said right there, YSM. When you have close rounds like that, when no big power punch to define a round, no activity at the end of a round to define a round, what do you go by when it's like an exact evening match round? What do you go by?
That's why I'm not calling it a robbery. I'm not saying it's a robbery because the rounds were so close that it's like, damn, like who really won that? It was nothing but a bunch of shoe shining going on, literally.
Yeah, I mean, but even with that first when that first score was like red though, I was like, well, it was too close. 7 rounds to 5. Like I said, 2 scores to 7 rounds to 5 for Subaru and Matias. So that was the thing on that. But y'all mentioned there with the whole thing about Turkey Al-Sheikh saying that Subaru would face Dalton Smith. That kind of like takes away.
Real fast. What happened with did they ask him about a rematch and then Turkey was like, no. What happened with that? Like I was confused.
Yeah, like I don't understand it because like by default it's like you have a voluntary defense of the title. If you end up losing in that fight, you have the option to go for an immediate rematch. So I'm like,
bro, no. Who the fuck cares about Dalton Smith? Who the fuck is that?
Who the Dalton Smith, man. Like, come on, what are we doing, folks? Dalton Smith? Oh man, like okay.
So for me in that, I think part of Turkey's motivation is to once again in a sense be the face of boxing. And when you running money like that, like you are paying money for Riyadh season fights, like you are, you think you can basically call the shots. I mean, I know you're a promoter. You're a promoter, but when you got money, you can go and make what you want. And we know that boxers want to make top dollar. It's not right. But as we say, boxing is a business on both sides for the promoter. As a promoter, you want to have the best fights, best fighters, things like that on your regime like that. Fighters want to make the most money. We know that. So in that regard, so do we expect? Let me say this. So in the next week or two, do we expect to see Matias make a retraction? No, say no. I don't want the Dalton Smith fight. He's not going to say that. He's not. There's no money. So money runs it. Unfortunately, that's what it is.
And yeah, I'm looking at this whole thing here with Dalton Smith, man. Checking out the whole thing with the box record, whatever it is, right? So yeah, they got him in there at like 18-0, 13 wins by way of knockout at 28 years old from Sheffield. Had his last bout in April against Matthew Germain. Who is this? Waleed Uiza, Jose Zepeda, Sam Maxwell, Billy Allington. I was seeing there if there's like.
So these the fights that get you a title shot. AJR, I'm out. I'm not that. Then I'm out. I can't. Okay, this tomfoolery.
Oh man, that is the whole.
Yo, if we look at the fighters that Zepeda, Zepeda is just known for getting beat by all the top guys, right? Mm-hmm. But if we look at Matias, has had a tough go of it. Like Matias last 6, Last 5, last 6. Woo, shit.
Yeah.
So,
it was
question: the guy that Turkey wants Matias to fight, who is he promoted by?
Come on, man. You know the answer to that question, brother. It's going to be a massive fight. Massive. Mr. Massive himself.
Cracked in fight, mate.
So
Yeah, we sitting there like,
my
yo, who
question
the
right to
fuck
you.
is Dalton Smith? Yo? Who's that, Eddie?
That's a favorite.
I want guys to get the fights. I want guys to get title shots because I don't. It shouldn't just be big names that are in a title picture.
Mhm.
But yo, we gotta like beat somebody that's of note.
Yeah.
To get the title shot, like
now I like mentioned it earlier about how you could have like stay busy fights where, and I talked about it with Hamza Shiraz when he had the fight against Tyler Denny last year, right? And he had like that as a stay busy fight, like highly, he's highly favored against Tyler Denny, and but he's still trying to get himself active, for the year, like at least to have more than one fight a year. So for me, if you do that and you're a world champion, at least for me, as long as it's within the top 15 and you want to stay busy and have that fight, that's cool. But if you want to like boost up a fight and have a whole bunch of publicity behind it and say, oh, this is a big fight when hardly anybody knows who that person is outside of like where he's at as far as his region, then why are we like boosting this up? That just don't make any sense right there. You know what I mean? So Dalton Smith against Subriel Matias, if they try to have this event go forward, I mean it is what it is. Like you said there, Terrell. If they got the money, the backing there with Saudi Arabia and their entertainment division there that Turkey is a part of, then if he wants to make those fights, he wants to make those fights. All right, so I wanted to get let's see if we have someone else on here because I wanted to kind of go with this before we go into the Friday's fights. Shout out to the Topic TV in the live chat. He has potential matchups here. First, Caleb Plant versus Edgar Berlanga. There, of course, with Caleb Plant, losing his last fight, and Edgar Berlanga, as I was mentioning earlier, getting cooked. He'll like absolutely cooked. I still think that is a fight that could be. Hey, I wouldn't mind that fight at all. If they could try to pull off that fight here before the end of the year, I say why not. A lot of people were saying there with Caleb Plant on one side, they were trying to have the whole event that happened in May with him going up against Resendiz, and then you had Jamal Charlo in there against Thomas Lamana that both of them would win. Then yeah, we could probably get a fight here later on down the line later this year. But Caleb Plant ended up losing by split decision. So now it's like I don't know what they're gonna do here next. But if you have a Caleb Plant versus Edgar Berlanga, I say why not? Let's go ahead and do it. As far as I know, Edgar Berlanga is pretty much like a promotional free agent. Of course, Topic you was out there for Berlanga's fight against Jonathan Gonzalez Ortiz, and you had the whole thing in there with Eddie Hearn talking about Berlanga having his last fight there under Matchroom Boxing. So yeah, he looks like he's a promotional free agent right now. So I say, hey,
what's one of Matt's favorite expressions? So basically, if Berlanga and Caleb Plant fights, the loser what? What does Matt would say? The loser goes straight to hell.
You mean like how Berlanga got? Hey, he would have said Berlanga got sent straight to hell with that fight last night. Oh yeah, man, but yeah, that one, yeah, that could be a lose-leave style match. Maybe it could be a lose-leave style match or something like that. So who knows how that
Yeah,
goes.
I would actually throw them on the card just for the namesake. Plant former champion. Berlanga has a name, even though that same name don't mean a hill of beans right now. But you can definitely throw them on the card to help sell a card like that. But I said the loser of the fight goes straight to hell. I mean, put this, Berlanga, I forgot, I don't know what his record is, but this is second loss, right? And then, but a lot of times it's how you lose, right? So of course,
Yeah.
no one expects him to win against Canelo. Nobody expected that. He got his money, right? And then he went home for a card last night in New York and got his money again there. I'm not sure how much he got, but nevertheless, he's quote unquote set for life in a sense. In terms, but like this, the money he's made already in his career, most boxers would never make that amount of money for the entire career. I think it's fair to say that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, like I said, for them, for Berlanga, he's done. He's hooked, as we say these days. Of course, he's what, 24, 25, 26, right? What is he?
Yeah, he's at 20. Actually, he's like 28.
So you have time theoretically to rebuild, but do we expect that after what we saw last night? No, I don't. I don't. That's just been real. That's just no boxing, right? So, but you can definitely throw him on a card with Cater Plant. That will help sell that card. And I said the loser would definitely go to hell because with Plant as a former champion losing to Berlanga, he'll be going straight to hell. So he definitely has some rebuilding on his career left too, right? I'm sure Plant has probably about good 3-4 years left in boxing like that, near the top like that. So that'll be an interesting fight. When I say once again the loser going straight to hell like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with it. I'm with it. Loser goes straight to hell. How about that? Yeah, that's a good one. And you talk about the thing there with Berlanga, and I said like with him and how he prepared for his fight against Hamza Sheeraz and the development of like thereof. I don't know like how he can like properly recalibrate his career because you have some people there that's out in social media. They kind of bring up a couple of those clips that he had where he was in the Pro Box gym there out in Plant City, and he's like doing some trying to do like movement and almost looking like Rolly Romero or something like that. I don't know, but I have no idea how Berlanga will properly reassess himself after this match because he got beat up in there and had the whole thing with the checkups and stuff like that. So he didn't really properly get recovered and get back to where he had to be at until real late. So this is going to be a really interesting move for Edgar Berlanga on where he has to go from this point in his professional career. You do have what it is, Keith Connolly, that is his manager there. I think they're part of like Split T Boxing or whatnot. So we got to see like how he's gonna be able to assess himself and what direction he can go while still trying to compete there in the super middleweight division.
And how do you grade Sheeraz, right? Now, granted, he fought Berlanga, which we know what he is at this point, but Sheeraz moving up to 168, he did what he had to do, right? And once again, how do you grade? Because one, he looked great at the weight. He looked big at the weight. He definitely looked big at the weight, right?
Yeah.
He did let his hands go in this fight, unlike his last fight against Adamus, right? So how do you grade him?
I think he could be pretty up. He could be up there as far as like the super middleweight division. Now, with the super middleweight division, we all know who's there as the undisputed champion right now. We all know what's going to be happening in September. So even though you have Hamza Sheeraz as like a top-rated contender, there's a fighter there that actually holds the interim belt in Christian and Billy. So I say, why not have Hamza Sheeraz against Christian and Billy there later this year? Because regardless of the result of Canelo Crawford, right? I don't see either of those fighters fighting again this year. I just don't. So for Sheeraz, I'm like, if you have that, then you had this win, you got the momentum from this win. What do you do next? If you're going to have that high rating and you still want to have to the point where you can compete for the world title, then I say you still have to be active. If it's going to be a top level fight, have the fight against Christian and Billy. I think that would be a really, really good fight there between those two. And I think that it's something that where it says, okay, the winner of that fight should be the clear next in line for the world title on that front. So that's why I feel like Hamza Shiraz could go as far as like his next move after getting this win against Edgar Berlanga, because it's like, if you're going to have Canelo and Crawford be in September, they ain't going to be fighting again this year. Here, you already have Hamza Shiraz fighting in mid-July. So I would think that he would try to get in another fight before the end of this year. So have that and Billy fight be a suggestion for what could be next for Hamza Shiraz.
Yeah, I definitely like the process of that fight. I think Billy is, based on his last fight, just once again just looking phenomenal, right? But even with the Crawford Canelo fight, main thing with Canelo, I don't know the status of his belts. If there's a mandatory that's due, and when that's that due is whichever belt, basically will they enforce that whenever it's due like that? Because remember, what was it last year? He had the mandatory with, I forgot who the mandatory was, but he ended up dropping the belt. And Skull got it, and then basically Canelo got it back. So what it said is, will one of Canelo's belts, will the mandatory be due again, and will they make him enforce it? If it does, will he actually elect to drop it? So a lot to be seen.
Yeah. At least, like I said there with the Christian and Billy, I don't know if the WBC will, do much of anything, because, some fight fans know what the WBC could stand for outside of, the World Boxing Council. So they know the little acronym for that. As far as like the WBO, you have, the number one ranked contender there is going to be fighting next week. Or at least on Saturday there. So you got, Diego Pacheco supposed to be fighting Trevor McCumbee. So that's supposed to be on the Ben Rodriguez Fumalele Cafu card here coming up. So with that being said, that's the thing there with the WBO, and the thing, with the IBF, he already honored the thing there with all that whole thing with the mandatory. So they're supposed to have a fight that's coming up to determine their next mandatory. And then with the WBA, Caleb Plant losing, to losing his last fight. So there you go. So now I think that kind of like frees things up as far as like getting the super middleweight division to properly position new mandatory challengers. So on that front, that's why I like suggested the whole thing with Christian and Billy there, and Hamza Shiraz as like another top rated matchup at the 168-pound division. So that's what I see on that. All right.
You said Pacheco's fighting McCumbee?
The thing there with Diego Pacheco, like he's supposed to, have his bout that's supposed to be at the start Frisco coming up against Trevor McCumbee. So that's a
good fight, a good test for him. And yeah. I'm gonna say right now, is there a chance for an upset? Because McCumbee's a tough customer.
Now I should have. Well, I ain't had much time after the post-fight press conference, but Diego Pacheco's trainer there is, of course, Jose Benavidez Sr. So I could have, talked with him a little bit about, the thing with that upcoming fight. So I think he has, Pacheco ready for this, but he can't slip up, because McCumbee could catch him. You know what I mean? So he gotta make sure that he's on his P's and Q's here for this upcoming bout against Trevor McCumbee, because with Pacheco, he's like, like I said, they're in the WBO. He's right on the cusp of competing for a world title, so he can't slip up on that front. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Topic also asked, like, okay, Shakur Stevenson versus Kid Austin. Yep, we were supposed to have that fight on February 22nd. Didn't necessarily work out that way. Kid Austin has been like a top-rated contender in the WBA rankings, but had the opportunity at the time to compete for the WBC lightweight title. Now, with Kid Austin, Floyd Schofield, he did have that first round knockout win over Tevin Farmer, but you had Oscar De La Hoya after that fight talking about having Kid Austin, Floyd Schofield in the mix with the bout that happened yesterday between Shakur Stevenson and William Zepeda. Do they revisit having the bout between Shakur Stevenson and Floyd Schofield? I say if Shakur Stevenson can, get back in a gear and fight again by the end of the year, then maybe, yeah. I say try to have it by December. But if not, then yeah, we would have to wait until 2026 for it. But the thing about it with Shakur Stevenson is we got to see what's going to happen if we have something in August. And then after something particularly happens in August, if we get a certain result for that, then there should only be one fight made at 135 pounds on that front, man. Shout out to Just Do Boxing in the building there. Peace to you, brother. And my guy Smitty said, "Wait, he ain't." Oscar says he's not sending Kid Austin out there with Shakur. Now, here's the point with that. I kind of would agree with that, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it would be Oscar that wouldn't send Kid Austin there with Shakur. It might be somebody else within Golden Boy that wouldn't do that. And from my perspective, it would be because of what happened that week of February 22nd that they wouldn't send them out there. So what you're going to end up having to see is Floyd Schofield Jr. going up against William Zepeda. And that's an in-house fight there in Golden Boy Promotions. And it said hey, you know what? You had that opportunity to fight Shakur Stevenson and it didn't happen. Okay. Whatever, the whole the technicalities of all that stuff and, okay, cool. But we ain't necessarily going to get you that particular match right now. We have you signed to a new deal, 5-fight deal, as Floyd Schofield Sr. says. So we want to see if how we could properly maneuver you, because those folks at Golden Boy, they got people there that have years and years of experience doing matchmaking as well. So are they gonna just put Floyd Schofield Jr. out there against Shakur Stevenson after seeing what happened here with their other guy and William Zepeda? I don't know if they're gonna really do all that. So let's see if they just have another in-house fight there between Floyd Schofield and William Zepeda, because that fight against Tevin Farmer, we didn't see much there at all because Farmer just got caught and got knocked out in the first round. So I would say before being able to put Floyd Schofield out there against Shakur Stevenson right now, have him have one fight against William Zepeda, and then which that opens up Shakur Stevenson to have either a voluntary defense or a unification bout. You know what I mean? And as of right now, if y'all see the scope of the lightweight division, right now you have one belt that's vacant, right? And you have another belt that just got acquired because it was, I would say vacated, right? So with those two that had two vacant, belts, there's only one of the world champion out there. And as I mentioned before, we saw the whole thing with that. And, I won't necessarily talk about that here, at least right now on that front. I might do a little bit of an extra, an overtime thing, not on YouTube, but maybe on social media or something like that, where I'll talk about that little particular subject, whatnot. So there it is on that. LFC Fair says, let's be so knowledgeable about boxing. Nah, I just, try to keep up as much as I can with the sport. Of course, with all of these divisions, 15 or so divisions, a whole bunch of rankings, top 15 in the rankings for all of those weight classes. I just try to keep up with what's going on week to week and get news wherever I can on that front, man. So yeah, so that's how I do it there. Yeah, just do, man. Hey, you missed out the thing there as far as like our analysis of Shakur Stevenson's performance against Williams Zepeda. We'll have you'll be able to catch it on the replay on that, and then we'll probably see if I catch up with you later on down the line to talk about the fight there. Y'all check out Just Do Boxing as well. You know what I mean? That's what I had as far as like the thing for Floyd Schofield Jr. He had the 5-fight deal with Golden Boy that was signed, so why not just go ahead and have another in-house fight before you say that you could have Kid Austin properly ready to contend and fight for a world title? Because I thought, at least for me, that Floyd Schofield was able to get up in the WBA rankings sooner than he really should have. You know what I mean? Because he had like one fight, I think it was in 2023, for like a version of the WBA belt that once he won it, he shot up to like number 3 or number 2 in the WBA rankings at the time. So I think he still needs to do things to develop what he could work on. You know what I mean? What is it? Before I go into the Friday card, question here from the topic. Do we see any unifications at 140 pounds? If so, who will be the first? Ooh, good question. Good question. We should have a unification at 140 pounds. Keith Connolly. Yeah, I said his name. Topic, you know Keith Connolly. You've been able to talk with him a few times. But come on, man. You had one of those world champions there in attendance yesterday at Louis Armstrong Stadium watching the WBC title, the WBC title fight between Pollo and Matias. But Keith Conley has another world champion out there who's supposed to be the lineal champion at 140 pounds, and a fighter that I guess the topic has supported over the past few months that don't have a fight right now in Teofimo Lopez. Lopez and Hitchens have the same manager. You can have the unification bout right there. Like, what are we doing? Okay. There has been, some history between Richardson Hitchens and Subriel Matias. When Subriel Matias was the IBF super lightweight champion, Richardson Hitchens was a top contender. And some people felt like Richardson Hitchens had a little bit of reluctance to face Subriel Matias and said something about, rehydration and all that type of stuff. But he ended up winning that IBF belt. Now, with Subriel Matias, right, he is now the WBC champion. And yeah, we had the whole thing about the Dalton Smith. Why would you have Subriel Matias defend the title against a Dalton Smith when you could have a unification bout with Subriel Matias and Richardson Hitchens, or Subriel Matias and Gary Antoine Russell? What are we doing here? Dalton Smith, come on. I don't want to have no rant or nothing on here, but YSM Sports Media, shout out to YSM Sports Media. He was exactly right. I'm sorry, y'all. Yes, I was there in attendance. Yes, I seen what happened after the fight. But who the fool is that guy? Like, come on, what are we doing here? Why can't we have these unification bouts at 140 pounds? Wait a minute. That reminds me. Like, what is it? Like, Josh Hader was the last unified champion as the undisputed champion at 140. Then he, vacated all them other belts but the WBO. And now because he loses to Teofimo Lopez, and Lopez is the lineal champion, and he ain't had one unification bout yet. Like, we ain't had none. Like, what are we doing here? All of these top fighters at 140 pounds, and we can't get one unification. What are we doing here? Like, come on, man. I'm sorry, but you had to like bring that up, and I'm like, no unification. What is this? Like the super featherweight division? Talking about no unification? Yeah, that's bad, man. All right, man, it's been about like almost 2 hours here on the live. And we still have to touch on what happened at Madison Square Garden, man. Of course, you had the trilogy there, Madison Square Garden sold out. Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano for the third time. Of course, this one stemming from their bout last November. A lot of publicity behind that particular bout, a lot of money behind that last particular bout. So they said, you know what, we're gonna run it again. And you know, with Serrano, want to see if she could get one more win on this thing here. And man, we had two classic bouts for those first two. This one right here, you know, had all the buildup and everything like that. But hate to break it to y'all, this one didn't. Of course, it didn't do much. You know, not until like the last few rounds, and it was more about, to me, what Amanda Serrano was doing, man. And I know that there was somebody on the live chat that was, really upset about the decision, but that approach by Amanda Serrano, particularly in those first few rounds, I didn't understand it at all. Is, you know, we had something where you talk about scoring properly, scoring about, and one of the things there that is used is effective aggression. You saw like a form of aggression from Amanda Serrano early in that fight, but it wasn't effective. Just being real with y'all, it wasn't effective. It was like, for me, she was throwing punches just to throw punches. She was nowhere near within range of Katie Taylor, and she was just throwing punches, like just throwing 1-2, 1-2, not like, you know, properly walking down Katie Taylor and throwing a 1-2 and trying to at least land on something, like land on the arm, land on the wrist, land on the shoulder, land on something. No, she was just throwing the punches, and that was it, and didn't land on nothing. You know what I mean? And I'm like, if you want to bank rounds that way or try to bank rounds that way, it's one thing. But if Katie Taylor is throwing punches and she's actually landing, and just like in the last bout, you know, having more of a visual effect, then Katie Taylor's gonna get those rounds. You know what I mean? And here, that's why I saw it. Like Katie Taylor, whenever she, you know, landed punches, it had more effect. She was sharper over the course of those rounds, and that's why she ended up getting a win here in this one. You know, it was two scores of 97 and 93, and one score had it 95-95. But you know, I just didn't feel like it was something that you could say that was like very close. You know what I mean? And yeah, exactly. Katie Taylor was countering with more intention on this. Yeah, and you know, we kind of seen it in their second bout, but at least in that second bout, you're seeing that Amanda Serrano was like at least within range and throwing punches and trying to land on something. But Katie Taylor, when she countered and caught Amanda Serrano. Here, Serrano, it almost seemed like, as I said, with the lack of being the aggression being effective, it was more of like she was tentative to see what was coming back from Katie Taylor, you know, and not really trying to do something to set up a lot of the shots. And I ain't really see much body work from Amanda Serrano until later on in the fight. And so with me, this was more of a clear win for Katie Taylor on one end. Okay. And there was like another thing that, and this is like, as they say with football, Monday morning quarterbacking. But I didn't like a couple of things there from Amanda Serrano, just being real with you on that. Well, I want to get Brother Terrell's thoughts on that fight and, you know, what you thought about that overall experience there for that third bout.
No, once again, I definitely echo all the sentiments you just said about that fight as far as your technical analysis of that, right? It was so obvious to the eye. Like, for example, you go back on Saturday, you look at Zepeda Shakur. Zepeda threw a million punches. They connected their arms and things like that, glancing blows. But in the difference between Katie and Amanda, she's just throwing punches. I'm like, I'm watching fight like, what is she doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
and that rhythm just simply continued throughout the course of the fight, right? And she literally followed Katie around the ring, and just boom, throwing jab here, throwing a short power shot, but they were not connecting, and that pattern continued throughout the fight. And once again,
Yeah.
I said, what is she doing, right? And so we know how it goes. You gotta cuff the ring, use your jab, cuff the ring, corner somebody, and make them fight, right? She
Mm-hmm.
never did. She never really quite did that. She never established that rhythm to actually throw a punch and connect. we
Mm-hmm.
know the use of a feint, right? Boom, just to try to check someone's stop that movement to set up a shot. But that wasn't it. She's throwing full fledged shots at some point and not connecting, and once again repeating that rhythm. So when she was announced that she lost the fight, I was not surprised at all. Not surprised, and frankly, uh, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they have Amanda Serrano, the betting favorite on the money line? I believe.
Oh man, because let me see if
I'm
they
pretty sure
still
they
have it.
did. I'm pretty sure that they did, and
They might still have it. They might still have it up
yeah.
here for something. So I'm gonna check if they did. Yeah, they
Because
did. They did.
if that was the case, they made a lot of people lose money, which is
I mean,
unfortunate.
it was close. Yeah, a lot of people, probably lost money, but it was a close. It was almost close to even. But yeah, that and I kind of like picked wrong as well. But this was like in the pick'em league. Like I thought that Amanda Serrano would finally get one, but like we were saying, like seeing those first few rounds and seeing Amanda Serrano just throw, punches the air. I'm like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? And I just didn't understand that approach, right? And so with that being said, that made this be a majority decision win instead of like a split or unanimous decision win, so to speak. There for Amanda Serrano. I mean, excuse me, Amanda Serrano. Katie Taylor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, the event was one thing. And some people kind of like see the result of this and then see the result of the last main event and said like, New York New York took 2 L's or whatever it is, but that's a whole other thing, right? But this thing here with Amanda Serrano, I kind of had the fight build up, like how they were building up this as a trilogy to like some of the previous rivalries that they had in boxing, like Holyfield Bowe or like Gotti Ward or something like that, or like they didn't even mention it there on Netflix. But how do you not include Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder? You know what I mean? Especially with that third fight, right? But for me, it seemed like with Amanda Serrano and how she carried herself over the course of the week, that she was, kind of happy and thankful that the event went through very well, more than like being a reaction to the result of losing for a third time against Katie Taylor. And I think approaching the fight, it was more of like, okay, I get this third opportunity. Yeah, you're talking about the whole thing with the second fight and the headbutts and all that type of stuff. But it was more of like, okay, I finally got the recognition that I deserved years ago, as far as like doing what I did years ago, but going through all of the all of these weight classes and having these fights all over the place and not necessarily getting the notoriety or the money and all that type of stuff, right? Now like coming off stemming off the first fight against Katie Taylor that was in 2022 at Madison Square Garden, then following it up and having the second fight being at AT&T Stadium last year, and then this fight here once again at Madison Square Garden, it was more of like a celebration of sorts. You know what I mean? To have these big events for women's boxing. So for her, it was more about a celebration of women's boxing and having big events being headlined by a women's title fight, undisputed title fight there in the super lightweight division, more so than her finally trying to get that back against Katie Taylor. That's kind of like how it looked like to me. instead of like saying like, come on, I can't even get much of nothing, like no, decision win over Katie Taylor. Like, what's going on here? I'm trying to do this and that, whatever. And yeah, we were both mentioning, we didn't understand what she was doing in the first half of the fight, but it almost was like she approached this fight more like she was thankful that she got these big fights, or she's part of these big fights, than being able to try to do what needs to be done in order for her to get the win. So that's what I felt on that front on there. So both of them said ain't no MFing way that they're gonna have a fourth fight. And there really shouldn't be a fourth fight. You got three fights, and Katie Taylor got the decision on all three. So what's the point of having a fourth fight? You know what I mean? So that was the thing on that one. And for Katie, I guess she's there as the undisputed super lightweight champion. And I say, outside of having another fight with Chantel Cameron, I don't see what other path that Katie Taylor should go ahead and have at this point. Like, she's when she recently turned 39 years old this year. So it's like, I was saying this going into this bout, I don't see many other fights left out there for either one of these fighters, particularly from a financial perspective, because I don't see him getting, just being honest, I don't see him getting anywhere close to the money that they've been getting for these last two fights that they've had against each other. So whether Katie Taylor faces Chantel Cameron, who's the interim WBC champ, there she had a win on this card on Friday, or anybody else that they could probably have that could potentially face Katie Taylor at this point, it's not gonna get that type of money that she's got here for this fight against Amanda Serrano. So don't be surprised if they say, you know what, yeah. It said Baumgartner said that she wants to fight Katie Taylor. Now, Baumgartner is there as the undisputed super featherweight champion. Okay. And she had the fight there against Jennifer Miranda in the co-feature. She ended up winning by unanimous decision in that one. There were, of course, times where she did clearly outbox Miranda, but there are also times there where she got caught a few times, right, from Miranda, and made it look closer than it really should have been. Now with Baumgartner on her front, there being as undisputed super featherweight champion, yeah, she could go up 2 divisions. Now, I don't think she's gonna have the whole thing where she could negotiate like how they had with Taylor and Serrano, because with Taylor and Serrano in their second fight, they had it at a catch weight of sorts of like around 136 or 137. And then here in this bout, it was a catch weight of 136. Baumgartner ain't gonna have that type of leeway anywhere close to that type of leeway for Katie Taylor if that fight is possible. So you could maybe have an undisputed versus undisputed, but hey, Baumgartner might have to travel over to the UK for all of that, and you might have, I don't know, maybe I'll talk, someone talk with Eddie Hearn, and you have the thing there with Jake Paul to have another Matchroom and MVP little collaboration with that. But yeah, I don't see like a path for Baumgartner to, she would have to be out there at 135 plus in order to compete there against Katie Taylor for those undisputed super lightweight titles. So I mean, maybe that could be the case, but I don't know how much money would be behind that, or what it would take in order to make that fight happen. We'll see how that goes. But as I mentioned there real quick, Elisa Baumgartner getting the unanimous decision win over Jennifer Miranda. And then to me, the fight of the night, unified super middleweight title fight, Savannah Marshall versus Shadasia Green. There went through 10 rounds. Early in the fight, you had Savannah Marshall look like she was outboxing Shadasia Green. They had a point there where Shadasia Green got deducted for holding Thomas Taylor, though. I thought Thomas Taylor wasn't doing a good job at all in that fight, because warn and then admonish Shadeja Green a whole bunch of times, but not really do that for Savannah Marshall. I thought that was, but then Shadeja Green like composed herself, then just impose the will, and I felt like use her size because she's more compact than Savannah Marshall, and then just like properly use the jab and was more had more emphasis behind the jab and worked off of that and wore down Savannah Marshall over the course of the 10 rounds. It was able to get the split decision victory there over Savannah Marshall to become the unified super middleweight champion. So props are on that, and that ended up being the performance of the night for that fight card, giving Shadeja Green additional money on top of the purse that she got for this fight. So shout out to her on that. You had Ellie Scottney getting a unanimous decision win, almost like a clean sweep over Yamalek Mercado. But the other one that could have been a performance of the night, Shanika Johnson getting a stoppage win over Sharetta Metcalf, and that was bad. Like Sharetta Metcalf was supposed to fight Dina Thorslin, but ended up Dina Thorslin had an announcement saying that she got pregnant, and so she was out of the bout. Okay, so then they put in Shanika Johnson, man, and oh my goodness, it was bad. It was bad from round one. And yeah, I know the head trainer there for Sharetta Metcalf, Christine. But as we saw there early in that bout, man, like Sharetta was not ready at all, and she looked really out of sorts from early. And that, man, Shanika Johnson just like went up there and just was boom, 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 boom. There's all these power shots and just walking through everything that Sharetta Metcalf could do, because Sharetta Metcalf was trying to, utilize her height and the reach and stuff, but like she just didn't have anything to stop the momentum of Shanika Johnson one bit. And Shanika just said, man, bump all that. I'm going to just get within range and I'm going to just beat you up. Boom, boom, boom. Beat her up. And it just was absolutely bad. And I know that, referee Charlie Fitch was there, like checking out Sharetta Metcalf after the end of like the 8th round, because she was getting hit with a whole bunch of power shots. And yeah, it was getting just absolutely atrocious. So in the 9th round, when Shanika Johnson just landed a whole bunch of shots, like Charlie Fitch just sat there and said, nah. And I know that, Sharetta Metcalf was upset, wanted to see if she could go ahead and finish the bout and try to see about going through the full 10 rounds. Charlie Fitch was having none of that. And Shanika Johnson ends up being the undisputed champion. Yeah, because they had all of the bantamweight titles there on the line, and it said it was an undisputed champion. But I found it funny, though. With the announcer there, it said that Shanika Johnson was the first Australian undisputed champion. Once again, y'all, it said that Shanika Sugar Knee Johnson was the first Australian, male or female, undisputed champion. So that should tell y'all something, right? That should tell y'all that guy George Kambosos Jr. was never, ever the undisputed champion at 135 pounds. And he was never the undisputed champion at 135 pounds. I've been telling y'all that for years. Okay? So there you have it. So that like kind of summarizes most of what happened out there in Madison Square Garden, although they had a little bit of a controversial decision in that Ramla Ali Lila Furtado fight, because I certainly thought that Lila Furtado won that fight. I don't know what those judges were thinking on that. So that's what you had on it. Was there anything else there, Terrell, that you saw in that fight card that stood out to you?
No, I mean the main thing. First of all, I'm glad to say this now. Shouts out to MVP Promotions, right, for putting these ladies into this position to have this card on a major platform, and giving them the attention and money due for all that they've done and contributed to the sport of boxing. So shouts out to MVP. So like I heard Jake Paul, he's done a great thing for boxing. I thought I would never say that years ago when he first started jumping into boxing. I thought I would never say that, but definitely want to give credit where credit's due to MVP and all he's done and continue to do for boxing. Right. So good for that. So I mean, but just even with Serrano, like I said, man, it's just unfortunate how she handled, fought her fight, right? I'm not sure she just had the weight of the promotion on her shoulders, the weight of coming off two losses to Katie Taylor, to perform again. The weight of been in some corners been announced as the favorite. I'm not sure if that just weighed on her performance like that, but there's definitely no need for a fourth fight for what? For what? There's that book has already been written, right?
Mm-hmm.
That story's already been told, so no need for that at all. I'm glad to see my favorite Baumgartner getting a win. Actually, I saw on a podcast, the Pivot podcast, on an interview last week prior to this fight. Kind of thought she would get a knockout, but Miranda was actually got some good size on her in that regard.
Yeah.
But definitely, Baumgartner got the win. But like, so what's next for her? She seems kind of reluctant to go past her weight class, right? We know the back and forth her and Clarissa has had for quite some time, but they're separated by what, more than 3 or 4 weight classes, so that's not necessarily realistic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but with Katie Taylor, she's at the end of her career, so I'm not sure she want to fight at a catchweight or something like that. But Baumgartner can't go overseas to fight. She doesn't mind trying. We know that.
Yeah, she does.
Back when she won her title a while back. So so that is realistic. But I don't know. But just once again, like I say, I'm just being realistic. These women will not be making cars like money like this on their own. And but that's okay though. So that's why people like MVP have came along and made a promotion for that, so they can have an opportunity. So I'm glad for that. So there you go.
Yeah, and with that being said, we have, of course, one of our panelists that often comes on the show here, Brother Matt of Brunch Boxing. Like, he did make a suggestion there for most valuable promotions there with Jake Paul and Nakisa Badarian to really go all in there with women's boxing and kind of like create a form of a women's boxing league. Just get all the women, just get them all. You know what I mean? All of them, don't matter like what promotional company they're under, like forget all that, like get them all under one, whole promotional company and have a whole women's boxing league, and then you'll be able to create the matches that could happen there on that front. Also, there, shout out to the topic on the live chat here again, and yep, this was what I was talking about leading into the fight that happened between Savannah Marshall and Shadasia Green. I felt like the winner would be able to face Franchon Cruz-Zern for the undisputed super middleweight championships. As last month with Franchon Cruz-Zern getting her win when she was defending the titles there for that Salida Promotions card that was in Verona, New York. So she's there as unified champion. You got Shadasia Green now as a unified champion. And you had those two that had the earlier fight before with Franchon Cruz-Zern getting a decision win. So now with Shadasia Green now being a unified champion, let's see if we revisit that. And now it would be for the undisputed super middleweight titles. And it gives, Franchon Cruz the opportunity to become the undisputed champion there once again. So I say, why not? Let's go ahead and have that fight. I mean, Franchon Cruz was there in attendance for, that fight card at Madison Square Garden. So, of course, she was paying extra attention to that fight that's happening there on that front. I might, see about getting that follow-up interview there with Franchon Cruz-Zern to, get a reaction for that, and then see about having that set up for that particular rematch for the undisputed super middleweight titles there. So, like I said, good fight card there overall. Was a good scene there in Madison Square Garden. Like I said, there was a good scene there with Louis Armstrong Stadium. A lot of fights that were out there. And like I said, I mean, there was a whole bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes. And I'll, kind of like go over like some overtime boxing thing or whatnot to kind of like talk about that there. So something like, I guess, what we missed here on the Boxing Source podcast. So I might just post up something here probably on Monday or something to kind of like talk about other topics that, kind of like took over the boxing news circles there on that front. You know what I mean? Because, there was a lot that happened between Wednesday and Saturday, to say the least there. It's just, for me, of course, one of the top stories that was part of the boxing, I just didn't really want to touch on that immediately. And just to be honest with y'all, on the overtime, I'm not gonna go into it that much. Just saying that it happened, and then kind of like have a short reaction to it, and then we're gonna move forward with that. So y'all know what y'all know. A lot of y'all may know what I'm talking about with that. So, but
Yeah,
that would,
real quick on
Oh.
on a side note, did you see the video clip on that was posted on IG with Hitchison, Haney, and Norman?
nah.
Well, basically, yeah, Hitchison in the middle, Haney to the right, and Norman on the left. And Hitchison was telling Norman to fuck him up.
I'm not sure if that was the joint, because you had the initial back and forth between Hitchens and Haney that was like outside of the stadium, because they had, how you had like grand arrivals and people walking in, and they have them do, like how do you have the celebrities and their award shows, they take the pictures and stuff like that. So they had like Devin Haney doing that walk over, and then I guess Hitchens like approached him or something like that. So, and they had like a verbal back and forth, but yeah, I didn't necessarily see all that, like the atmosphere like on the floor there where the ring was at after all the fights happened. It was like an absolute crazy scene going on or whatever it is, because you had media people trying to get to fighters that were there in attendance, try to get words from them. You had fans that wanted to get pictures and all that type of stuff. So it was a crazy scene, because I mean, like like I was mentioned there, you had like Jarrell Big Baby Miller, you had Clarissa Shields, you had Devin Haney, you had Richard Hitchens, you had Brian Norman Jr., you had Abdullah Mason, you had Sam Noakes, who Abdullah Mason is going to be facing. You had Terrence Crawford, of course, who was in the corner there with Shakur Stevenson. You had a lot of, and many others that were out there, so it was an absolute crazy scene there at Louis Armstrong Stadium, for that fight card. But, overall, it looked like aesthetically it looked good. But I'm telling you, man, that cell phone service still got me bothered, because that like had me absolutely
Yeah, about that.
And that it was, the timing of that was just at the absolute worst, because we had something going on during the day, and my guy brother Terrell was able to step up and handle business for that. So big shout out to you, brother Terrell, for doing that for me, as far as like handling business over there with family and all that type of thing there. So big shout out to you on that front. And yeah, like I said, I mean, it was almost like, what the heck was I going to do? Because it was like and I swear to you, I couldn't get anything going until I completely left the facility. I had to be like on the subway or something, leaving that area in order to get some type of cell phone coverage. That was just the worst, man. I hope that experience, like, I hope I never go through that experience ever again. Like, yeah, it was just absolutely crazy there, man. With that being said, man, what is it? A little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern time here for Sunday, July 13th. That is it for me for this edition of the Boxing Source podcast. Once again, thanks to Brother Terrell here for being a panelist on, and also YSM Sports Media for joining in to discuss what was going on Saturday, and everyone that was able to participate in the live chat here. Just be sure to hit the like button there if you're on the YouTube watching, and then hit the share button, and then it'll be available on audio form here. I would say probably around the same time tomorrow, something like that. So you'll be able to, people will be able to listen to it on audio form. Like I said, it's You know, the longest running podcast in existence, as they say, is this is the 11th season of, as they say, the Boston Source podcast is. So with that being said, y'all, that's what I got. And I'll be able to catch y'all later. All right. Peace out.
Out.